The rain hit the asphalt like gunfire. Cold Texas rain. The kind that turned empty streets into mirrors and made neon lights bleed across the pavement. Natalie Carter stood under the buzzing street lamp outside a rundown bar on the east side of Houston, Texas. Her black leather jacket clung to her shoulders, soaked through. The wind whipped strands of her dark hair across her face. Across the street, the courthouse clock struck midnight. That sound meant something tonight. Tonight was the anniversary. The night her life burned to the ground. Natalie looked down at the small silver lighter in her hand. The engraving on it was almost worn off, but she could still make out the words. Ride or die. She let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, real funny. The bar door creaked open behind her. A drunk guy stumbled out, lighting a cigarette. He glanced at Natalie, noticing the pistol tucked under her jacket. Damn, girl, he muttered, backing away slowly. Ain't my business. Smart man. Because tonight, Natalie Carter wasn't here to drink. She was here to remember. And maybe to begin something worse. 3 years earlier. Houston in the summer smelled like gasoline, fried food, and trouble. Natalie drove her old Ford Mustang down Washington Avenue with the windows rolled down, music blasting from the speakers. Classic rock. Lynyrd Skynyrd. The Texas skyline glowed ahead, skyscrapers reflecting the orange sunset. She pulled into the parking lot of a sleek downtown bar called Velvet Room. Inside, the place buzzed with energy, bartenders shaking cocktails, country music blending with hip-hop, businessmen laughing too loud. Natalie slipped through the crowd like she owned the place. And honestly, she kinda did. Because tonight she wasn't just a bartender. She was celebrating. She spotted him sitting at the bar. Jake. Jake Miller. Her boyfriend. Her partner. Her future, or at least that's what she believed back then. Jake looked up and grinned. "'Bout time you showed up, Nat." She slid onto the stool beside him. "Relax, cowboy. I work here, remember?" Jake raised a glass. To Natalie Carter. She raised an eyebrow. "What's the occasion?" Jake smirked. "You got the promotion." Natalie froze. "What?" He slid an envelope across the bar. She opened it slowly. "Manager position. Double salary. Full benefits." Natalie blinked. "Holy." Jake laughed. "Yeah. Told you they'd pick you." Natalie wrapped him in a hug. "Oh my God, Jake. We're finally getting somewhere." Jake kissed her forehead. "Damn right we are." But someone else watched them from the far corner of the bar. A man in a gray suit. Expensive watch. Cold eyes. His name was Victor Hale. And Natalie had no idea that man would soon destroy everything she loved. 6 months later. Life moved fast when things were going right. Natalie now ran the Velvet Room like a boss. She handled staff, money, suppliers, everything. The bar had never been more profitable. But that success came with attention. One night Victor Hale walked into the bar. Natalie noticed him instantly. Not because he was loud. But because he wasn't. The man carried silence like a weapon. He approached the bar slowly. Natalie wiped a glass and smiled politely. "What can I get you?" Victor studied her like she was a puzzle. "Whiskey." "Which one?" "Your best." Natalie poured a glass of Texas bourbon and slid it over. Victor took a sip. Then nodded. "You're Natalie Carter." It wasn't a question. Natalie frowned. "Yeah, do I know you?" Victor smiled slightly. "No." He set the glass down. "But I know you." Something about the way he said it made Natalie uneasy. Jake appeared beside her. "Problem here?" Victor glanced at him. "No problem." He placed $500 cash on the counter. For the whiskey. Natalie stared. That drink's $20. Victor stood. Keep the change. Then he leaned closer. You run a good business, Natalie Carter. A pause. But every good business eventually gets partners. Natalie crossed her arms. We're not looking for investors. Victor smiled again. Oh. He walked toward the door. You will be. And then he left. Jake shook his head. Rich guys love throwing money around. Natalie didn't laugh. Something about Victor Hale made her stomach twist. Like thunder before a storm. The first crack. 2 weeks later everything started falling apart. Suppliers stopped delivering. Liquor orders disappeared. Health inspectors suddenly showed up 3 times in 1 week. Natalie slammed the office desk. This is bullshit. Jake paced the room. Someone's messing with us. Then the phone rang. Natalie answered. A familiar voice spoke calmly. Good evening, Miss Carter. Her blood ran cold. Victor Hale. Natalie gritted her teeth. What do you want? Victor's voice was smooth. I believe I offered you a partnership. You threatened my business. Semantics. Natalie slammed her fist on the desk. I built this place myself. Victor chuckled softly. Not anymore. Silence filled the office. Then Victor said something that made Natalie's heart drop. You have 48 hours. For what? To decide if you'd rather work with me. A pause. Or watch everything burn. The line went dead. Jake looked at her. What did he say? Natalie whispered. We're in trouble. The betrayal. 2 nights later Natalie walked into the bar and froze. Police. Yellow tape. Flashing red lights. Her stomach dropped. An officer approached her. Are you Natalie Carter? Yes, what happened? The officer looked at his notes. We found illegal narcotics in your storage room. Natalie felt the world spin. What? That's impossible. The officer sighed. Ma'am, we also have witness testimony saying you were selling. Natalie shook her head. No, someone set me up. Then she saw him. Jake. Standing across the street. Talking to Victor Hale. Her heart shattered. Jake looked at her. And didn't look guilty. He looked relieved. Natalie walked toward him slowly. Her voice trembled. Jake. He avoided her eyes. I'm sorry, Nat. Sorry for what? Victor stepped forward. Business. Natalie stared at Jake. You told them? Jake swallowed. It was the only way out. Her voice cracked. You sold me out. Victor placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. Loyalty is expensive, Miss Carter. Natalie whispered something then. Something quiet. Something cold. You're gonna regret this. Victor smiled. No. He leaned closer. You are. Police grabbed Natalie's arms. Handcuffs clicked. As they pushed her toward the squad car, Natalie locked eyes with Jake one last time. And in that moment, something inside her died. Present day. The rain in Houston finally stopped. Natalie flicked the lighter closed. 3 years. 3 years in prison for a crime she didn't commit. 3 years planning revenge. She looked down the street. At the luxury skyscraper glowing in the distance. Hale Industries Tower. Victor Hale's empire. Natalie whispered to herself. Time to say hello. She stepped off the curb and walked into the darkness. But what Natalie didn't know was that Victor Hale had been waiting for this moment. Because the game she thought she was starting had already begun. And the devil already knew her name. The night air in Houston, Texas carried the smell of wet concrete and gasoline as Natalie Carter crossed Main Street. Traffic hummed in the distance. Neon signs flickered above taco trucks and late-night convenience stores. The city was alive the way it always was, loud, restless, unapologetic. But Natalie moved through it like a ghost. 3 years in prison had carved something sharp inside her. The woman who once laughed behind the bar at Velvet Room was gone. What remained was colder, more patient, and far more dangerous. She stopped across the street from Hale Industries Tower. The building rose into the night sky like a blade of glass and steel. 40 floors of money, power, and secrets. Victor Hale's kingdom. Natalie tilted her head back, studying the glowing windows. Nice castle, she muttered. A black SUV rolled past her slowly. Inside, 2 men in suits watched. Natalie noticed. Of course she did. She had learned something important in prison. Always assume someone is watching. She pulled her hood over her head and walked away casually. The SUV stayed where it was. But one of the men picked up his phone. Yeah, he said quietly. She's here. Earlier that evening. Natalie stepped into a small diner on the edge of Midtown. The place was pure Texas. Red vinyl booths. A jukebox playing old country songs. The smell of bacon grease and cheap coffee floating in the air. A waitress with tired eyes looked up. Kitchen's closing soon, honey. Natalie slid into a booth. Just coffee. The waitress poured it and nodded. You look like hell. Natalie smirked. Been told that before. The waitress shrugged. Houston'll do that to people. Natalie stirred the coffee slowly. Across the diner, a man sat alone in the corner booth. Baseball cap low. Leather jacket. Watching her. Natalie didn't look at him directly. Instead, she raised the coffee cup and spoke quietly. You gonna keep staring all night, or you got something to say? The man chuckled and walked over. He slid into the booth across from her. Still got that attitude, huh, Nat? Natalie finally looked up. And for the first time that night, her expression softened. Marcus. Marcus Rivera grinned. Damn. Prison didn't break you. Natalie leaned back. Nope. Marcus studied her. You look different. I am. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah. I can see that. Marcus Rivera had been the bar's head of security back when Velvet Room was still alive. Big guy. Ex-Marine. Loyal as hell. And one of the only people who believed Natalie when everything collapsed. He slid a folder across the table. You asked for info. Natalie opened it. Photos. Financial records. Security maps. Marcus leaned forward. Hale Industries ain't just a corporate company. Natalie flipped through the pages. What is it then? Marcus lowered his voice. Money laundering. Offshore accounts. Political bribes. Natalie's eyes narrowed. So the guy who framed me is way dirtier than you thought, Marcus finished. Natalie closed the folder. Good. Marcus frowned. That's not good, Nat. Guys like Hale? They don't lose. Natalie took a slow sip of coffee. They do eventually. Marcus shook his head. You're talking about going to war with a billionaire. Natalie looked him straight in the eyes. No. A cold smile appeared. I'm talking about destroying one. Victor Hale. High above the city, Victor Hale stood inside his glass office. The skyline stretched endlessly beyond the windows. Houston glittered like a field of diamonds. Victor adjusted his cufflinks calmly. Behind him, the same security man from the SUV stepped inside. Sir. Victor didn't turn. She's back. Victor smiled faintly. I know. The man hesitated. You expected this? Victor finally turned around. 3 years in prison tends to motivate people. The guard asked carefully. What are your orders? Victor walked to the bar in the corner of the office and poured a glass of scotch. Nothing. Sir? Victor took a sip. Let her move. The guard looked confused. You want us to watch her? Victor chuckled softly. Oh, we'll do more than watch. He stared at the city below. Every revenge story begins the same way. A pause. The hero thinks they're hunting the villain. Victor's smile grew darker. But they never realize. He finished the sentence quietly. They walked into the trap. Planning the war. Natalie and Marcus sat in Marcus's garage later that night. The place smelled like motor oil and cigarette smoke. A whiteboard stood against the wall covered in names and arrows. Marcus tapped a photo. That's Hale's right-hand guy. Natalie studied the picture. A tall man with slick hair and sharp eyes. Name? Daniel Brooks. Natalie leaned closer. What does he do? Marcus laughed. Better question is what doesn't he do? He pointed at several files. Fixer. Enforcer. Bribe handler. Natalie crossed her arms. So he's the guy who handles Hale's dirty work. Exactly. Natalie stared at the board. Every war needed a starting point. Every empire had a weak brick. And Daniel Brooks looked exactly like that brick. Marcus noticed the look in her eyes. Oh hell no. Natalie smiled. Oh hell yes. Marcus rubbed his face. You're gonna kidnap a corporate executive? Natalie shrugged. Relax. What's the plan then? Natalie walked to the board and grabbed a marker. Daniel Brooks drinks every Thursday night at a place called Iron Horse. Marcus nodded. Country bar. Exactly. She circled the name. Loud music. Drunk people. No cameras in the parking lot. Marcus slowly realized where this was going. Oh man. Natalie turned. We grab him. Marcus groaned. This is insane. Natalie smirked. You in? Marcus sighed heavily. Then he grabbed his keys. Damn right I'm in. Iron Horse Bar. Thursday night. Country music blasted through the bar speakers. Boots stomped against wooden floors. Cowboys shouted over cheap beer and whiskey. Natalie sat at the bar wearing ripped jeans, a black tank top, and a trucker cap. She looked like any other woman out for drinks. Except for the pistol hidden behind her waistband. Marcus sat 2 stools away pretending to watch a football game. Natalie checked the door. Where's our guy? Marcus glanced at his watch. Any minute. Right on cue. The door opened. Daniel Brooks walked in. Expensive suit. Confident swagger. He looked like the kind of man who had never heard the word no. Natalie smiled slowly. Showtime. Brooks ordered a whiskey and leaned against the bar. Natalie slid closer. Long night? Brooks glanced at her and grinned. Depends how it ends. Natalie laughed softly. Smooth. Brooks raised an eyebrow. You from around here? Natalie shrugged. Sometimes. They talked for 10 minutes. Brooks grew comfortable. Too comfortable. Natalie stood. Wanna get some air? Brooks smirked. Lead the way. They walked outside. The parking lot sat dark and empty behind the bar. Crickets chirped in the Texas night. Brooks stepped closer. Now what? Natalie's smile vanished. Now? Marcus stepped out from behind a truck. Brooks frowned. What the? The stun gun crackled. Brooks collapsed instantly. Marcus caught him before he hit the ground. He stared at Natalie. You flirt way too good. Natalie shrugged. Occupational hazard. They dragged Brooks into the back of Marcus's van. Marcus slammed the doors. Well, he said. We just kidnapped Victor Hale's fixer. Natalie looked at the unconscious man calmly. Good. Marcus started the engine. You realize Hale's gonna come after us. Natalie leaned back in the seat. That's the point. Somewhere outside Houston. Brooks woke up tied to a chair. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling. An abandoned warehouse. He blinked slowly. What the hell? Natalie stepped out of the shadows. Brooks stared. Recognition hit. You. Natalie crossed her arms. Miss me? Brooks swallowed. You're supposed to be in prison. Natalie tilted her head. Funny story. She leaned closer. I got out. Brooks forced a laugh. You have no idea what you just did. Natalie's voice dropped. Oh, I do. Marcus cracked his knuckles behind her. Brooks's confidence started cracking. You think Hale's scared of you? Natalie leaned down until their faces were inches apart. No. Her eyes burned with quiet fury. But he's about to be. Brooks suddenly laughed. Loud. Uncontrollable. Natalie frowned. What's so funny? Brooks looked up at her with pure amusement. You think this is revenge? Natalie didn't answer. Brooks smiled. You still don't get it. A long pause. Then he whispered something that made the room go silent. Hale didn't frame you for money. Natalie's stomach tightened. Then why? Brooks grinned. Because you were never the target. Natalie felt a chill crawl up her spine. What are you talking about? Brooks leaned forward in the chair. You were just bait. The warehouse suddenly felt colder. Natalie whispered. Bait for who? Brooks' smile widened. For the real enemy. Natalie's heart pounded. Who? Brooks laughed again. You'll find out soon. A loud noise echoed outside the warehouse. Engines. Multiple vehicles. Marcus rushed to the window. His face turned pale. Nat. She looked at him. What? Marcus swallowed hard. There's like 10 black SUVs outside. Natalie turned slowly toward Brooks. Brooks smiled like a man who already won. Looks like the devil heard his name. Outside. Doors slammed. Weapons clicked. And Victor Hale's voice echoed through a loudspeaker. Natalie Carter. A pause. Let's talk. Natalie realized something terrifying. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was war. And she had just fired the first shot. The warehouse suddenly felt smaller. Natalie Carter stood in the center of the room, staring at the metal door while the sound of engines echoed outside. 1 SUV. 2. 3. Marcus counted under his breath near the window. 7, 8, 9. He looked back at her. Nat, we got a damn army outside. Daniel Brooks laughed from the chair he was tied to. Did you really think you could grab Hale's right-hand man and just walk away? Natalie ignored him. Her mind was already calculating. Distances. Entrances. Escape routes. 3 years in prison had taught her one rule. Panic is how you die. Outside, a loudspeaker crackled. Victor Hale's calm voice rolled through the night air. Natalie Carter. His voice sounded almost amused. Kidnapping one of my executives was a bold move. Marcus whispered, he sounds way too relaxed. Natalie stepped toward the warehouse door slowly. Because he wants something. Brooks smirked. Oh, he does. Natalie stopped. And what's that? Brooks tilted his head. You. Silence filled the warehouse. Outside, boots crunched against gravel. Natalie walked over to Brooks and crouched in front of him. Let me explain something to you. Her voice was low. Cold. You framed me. You destroyed my life. Brooke shrugged as much as the ropes allowed. That wasn't personal. Natalie smiled slightly. That's where you're wrong. She pulled a knife from her pocket and pressed the blade lightly against his throat. Everything is personal now. Brooke swallowed. But then he laughed again. You still don't understand. Natalie narrowed her eyes. What? Brooks leaned forward. Hale doesn't want you dead. Natalie hesitated. That didn't make sense. Marcus frowned. Why the hell not? Brooks looked straight at Natalie. Because you're valuable. Natalie stared at him. What are you talking about? Before Brooks could answer. Bang. The warehouse door exploded inward. Flashlights flooded the room. Men in black tactical gear stormed inside. Drop the weapon. Marcus raised his hands instantly. Whoa, 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 easy. Natalie didn't move. The knife remained against Brooks' throat. Then a familiar voice spoke calmly from behind the soldiers. That won't be necessary. The men stepped aside. Victor Hale walked in. Tall. Perfectly dressed. Calm as ever. Like he had just arrived at a business meeting. Not a hostage situation. Natalie slowly stood up. For 3 years she imagined this moment. She imagined screaming. Punching him. Killing him. But standing face to face with Victor Hale again. She felt something worse than anger. She felt clarity. Victor looked at her like someone studying a rare animal. Miss Carter. Natalie's voice was ice. Victor. Marcus whispered quietly, please tell me you got a plan. Natalie muttered back. Working on it. Victor glanced at Brooks tied to the chair. Daniel, this is embarrassing. Brooks sighed. Yeah, boss. Rough night. Victor sighed dramatically. Untie him. 2 guards stepped forward and cut the ropes. Natalie didn't try to stop them. She was too busy studying Victor. Something was wrong. Very wrong. This man wasn't acting like someone who just got attacked. He was acting like someone who expected it. Victor rubbed his temples. Natalie. He looked genuinely disappointed. I thought prison would make you smarter. Natalie crossed her arms. You framed me. Victor nodded casually. Yes. Marcus blinked. Damn, he just admitted that. Natalie didn't react. Why? Victor walked slowly around the room. Studying the old walls. The broken windows. This place reminds me of Detroit. Natalie snapped. Victor. He stopped and looked at her again. You want to know why I destroyed your life? Natalie said nothing. Victor smiled. Because someone asked me to. The words hit her like a punch. What? Victor shrugged. You were inconvenient. Natalie's heart started pounding. Who asked you? Victor tilted his head slightly. Now that is a very interesting question. Marcus stepped forward. Yeah, we'd love the answer to that. Victor chuckled. Relax, Marcus. I know who you are. Marcus froze. How the hell? Victor waved a hand. You used to work security at Velvet Room. Marcus whispered. This dude's creepy as hell. Victor turned back to Natalie. You were asking the wrong question all along. Natalie narrowed her eyes. Then what's the right one? Victor stepped closer. Close enough that only she could hear him. Who were they really trying to get to? Natalie's stomach twisted. What do you mean? Victor studied her face carefully. You really don't know. Natalie's voice hardened. Know what? Victor looked almost impressed. That they were hunting your father. The world went silent. Natalie blinked. My, what? Marcus looked confused. Your dad? Natalie shook her head slowly. My father died when I was 12. Victor smiled. No. A pause. He disappeared. Natalie's breath caught. Victor's voice lowered. And a lot of very powerful people have been looking for him ever since. Natalie felt like the floor disappeared under her feet. No, that's impossible. Victor looked amused. You were always told he was a mechanic in Dallas, right? Natalie didn't answer. Because that was exactly what she had always believed. Victor continued calmly. That wasn't his real job. Marcus asked slowly. So what did he do? Victor answered with one word. Intelligence. Natalie stared at him. What? Victor walked toward the broken warehouse window. Your father worked for the government. Natalie's heart pounded violently. No. Victor turned. Specifically. He paused. For an agency that technically doesn't exist. Marcus whispered. Oh hell. Natalie shook her head. You're lying. Victor shrugged. Am I? He nodded toward Brooks. Tell her. Brooks sighed. Your old man ran covert operations in Eastern Europe. Natalie felt dizzy. No. Brooks continued. He disappeared with something extremely valuable. Natalie whispered. What? Victor smiled. A list. Marcus frowned. What kind of list? Victor's voice became serious. The kind that can destroy governments. Natalie stared at him. And you think I have it? Victor shook his head. No. Then he leaned closer. But I think you know where it is. Natalie laughed suddenly. A bitter laugh. You're insane. Victor studied her eyes carefully. You have the same look your father had. Natalie's voice hardened. I never met my father after he left. Victor nodded slowly. Yes. He paused. That's what they told you. Natalie's chest tightened. What are you saying? Victor's next words landed like a bomb. Your father visited you 2 days before he disappeared. Natalie froze. Memories flashed. A blurry image. A man's voice. A silver lighter. Her lighter. Victor pointed at it in her hand. That belonged to him. Natalie's fingers tightened around the metal. Victor smiled. See? He stepped back. The devil always leaves clues. Marcus looked at Natalie. Nat, is that true? Natalie whispered. I don't remember. Victor nodded. That's because your father erased your memory. The warehouse went silent again. Natalie's head spun. You're lying. Victor shrugged. Believe whatever helps you sleep. Then he looked at his watch. Well, this has been fun. Natalie snapped back to reality. You're just leaving? Victor smiled. Yes. Marcus blinked. That's it? Victor began walking toward the door. I never came here to kill you. Natalie asked quietly. Then why? Victor stopped at the doorway. And said something that sent chills down her spine. Because the people hunting your father. He looked back at her. Just arrived in Houston. Natalie felt the air leave her lungs. What? Victor's expression turned deadly serious. You think I'm the devil? A pause. You haven't met the real ones yet. Then he stepped outside. The SUVs started one by one. Within seconds. They were gone. Marcus stared at Natalie. Nat. She didn't answer. Her entire life suddenly felt like a lie. Marcus whispered. You okay? Natalie looked down at the lighter in her hand. Her voice was barely audible. My father wiped my memory. Marcus frowned. You believe that psycho? Natalie didn't answer. Because something terrifying just surfaced in her mind. A faint memory. A man kneeling in front of her. Whispering something. A warning. Natalie's eyes widened. Marcus noticed immediately. What? Natalie whispered slowly. I think. She looked up. I remember where the list is. Marcus blinked. Wait, what? Natalie's voice trembled. It's not in a bank. Then where? Natalie swallowed. It's buried somewhere in Houston. Marcus groaned. Oh great. That narrows it down. Natalie shook her head. No. Her face turned pale. I remember the place. Marcus leaned forward. Where? Natalie whispered the word slowly. The old velvet room. Marcus froze. That place burned down 3 years ago. Natalie nodded. I know. A long silence filled the warehouse. Then Marcus asked quietly. You think your dad hid a government conspiracy under your old bar? Natalie looked toward the city lights in the distance. Her voice turned cold again. Looks like we're going back. But across the city. Inside Hale Industries Tower. Victor Hale watched security footage of the warehouse. Daniel Brooks stood beside him. You didn't tell her everything. Victor smiled slightly. No. Brooks asked. Should we? Victor took a slow sip of scotch. Not yet. Brooks nodded toward the screen showing Natalie leaving the warehouse. You think she'll find the list? Victor's smile widened. Oh, I'm counting on it. Brooks frowned. Why? Victor whispered quietly. Because once she does. His eyes turned darker. The real hunters will come out. And when they did, Houston would burn. The ruins of the Velvet Room looked like a grave. 3 years ago the bar had been one of the busiest nightlife spots in Houston, Texas. Music used to shake the walls. Neon lights glowed through the windows. The smell of whiskey and barbecue filled the air. Now, the building stood abandoned. Charred beams. Broken glass. Graffiti covering the outside walls. The old neon sign that once said Velvet Room now flickered weakly, with only 2 letters still glowing. V. R. Natalie Carter stood across the street staring at it. Marcus parked the truck beside her. He looked at the burned building and shook his head. Man, this place used to be alive. Natalie didn't answer. Memories flooded her mind. Jake laughing behind the bar. Customers cheering during football games. Her first night managing the place. Her life before everything went to hell. Marcus stepped out of the truck. You sure about this? Natalie nodded slowly. My father hid something here. Marcus rubbed his chin. And somehow little 12-year-old you knows where? Natalie held up the silver lighter again. Her father's lighter. The engraving was scratched, but still readable. Ride or die. She whispered to herself. Come on, think. Marcus looked around nervously. You know Victor's probably watching us. Natalie replied calmly. Good. Marcus blinked. That's not comforting. Natalie crossed the street and pushed open the broken front door. The hinges creaked loudly. Dust filled the air inside. The once lively bar was now a skeleton. Tables overturned. The bar counter burned black. Broken liquor bottles scattered across the floor. Marcus whistled. Damn. Natalie walked slowly through the room. Every step echoed. Her eyes moved across the walls. Searching. Waiting for something to click. Marcus kicked a broken stool aside. So what exactly are we looking for? Natalie whispered. A memory. Marcus sighed. Cool. That helps a lot. Natalie ignored him. She walked behind the old bar counter. Her heart started beating faster. Something about standing there again felt strange. Familiar. Like déjà vu. Marcus leaned on the counter. You used to run this place like a queen. Natalie ran her fingers across the burned wood. My father stood here once. Marcus looked surprised. You remember that now? Natalie nodded slowly. Bits of it. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Well, what happened? Natalie closed her eyes. The memory came slowly. A dim bar. Late night. A man kneeling in front of her. His face blurry. But his voice clear. If anything ever happens to me, remember the music. Natalie opened her eyes suddenly. The jukebox. Marcus looked confused. What? Natalie pointed to the corner. The old jukebox still stood there. Covered in dust. Marcus laughed. You think the secret government list is inside a damn jukebox? Natalie walked toward it. Maybe. Marcus shrugged. Hell, stranger things have happened. She wiped dust off the machine. The glass panel cracked but intact. Old song titles still visible. Johnny Cash. Willie Nelson. Elvis Presley. Natalie stared at the buttons. Then she whispered something. Track 17. Marcus frowned. Why that one? Natalie pressed the button. The machine hummed weakly. For a moment nothing happened. Then. Click. A hidden panel slid open beneath the jukebox. Marcus's jaw dropped. Oh, shit. Inside the compartment sat a small metal lockbox. Natalie stared at it. Her hands trembled slightly. Marcus whispered. Please tell me that's not a bomb. Natalie slowly pulled the box out. Heavy. Cold. Old. Marcus leaned closer. No key? Natalie flipped the box over. There was a small keypad. Marcus frowned. Great. Password. Natalie closed her eyes again. Another memory flickered. Her father's voice again. Your birthday, but backwards. Natalie's eyes opened. Marcus watched her carefully. You remember something? Natalie nodded. She typed the numbers. 2104. The box clicked open. Marcus held his breath. Natalie lifted the lid slowly. Inside. A small black USB drive. Marcus blinked. That's it? Natalie picked it up. Her heart raced. Marcus scratched his head. Dude, if this thing really has a list that can destroy governments. Natalie finished his sentence. Then a lot of people are going to want it. Marcus nodded. Yeah. Then he looked toward the door. Speaking of which. Natalie followed his gaze. Red laser dots suddenly appeared on the walls. Dozens of them. Marcus cursed. Oh hell. The front door burst open. Men in tactical armor flooded inside. But these men weren't Victor Hale's security. Different uniforms. Different gear. Black helmets. No insignia. One man stepped forward. Tall. Cold eyes. European accent. Well done, Miss Carter. Natalie slowly closed her hand around the USB. Who the hell are you? The man smiled. My name is Adrian Volkov. Marcus muttered. That name sounds like a villain. Volkov ignored him. We have been searching for that device for many years. Natalie's heart dropped. You're the ones Victor warned me about. Volkov nodded. Your father was difficult. Natalie's voice turned deadly. What did you do to him? Volkov shrugged casually. We tried to persuade him. Marcus whispered. That's never good. Volkov continued. But your father chose loyalty. Natalie's chest tightened. What does that mean? Volkov's smile faded. It means he died protecting that drive. The words hit Natalie like a hammer. Her father. Dead. Because of this. Marcus looked at the armed soldiers surrounding them. Well, this is a bad situation. Volkov extended his hand. Give me the drive. Natalie didn't move. Volkov sighed. You really should not make this difficult. Marcus leaned closer to Natalie. You got any crazy plans right now? Natalie whispered. Working on it. Volkov raised a finger. The soldiers aimed their rifles. Last chance. Natalie slowly stepped forward. Volkov smiled. Yes, very good. Natalie held out the USB drive. Volkov reached for it. Then. Bang. A gunshot exploded. One of Volkov's soldiers dropped. Everyone turned. Marcus stared at the doorway. Wait, what? A man stood there holding a rifle. Natalie's breath caught. Jake. Jake Miller stepped inside. Older. Rougher. But unmistakably Jake. Marcus shouted. Are you kidding me? Jake looked straight at Natalie. Hey Nat. Natalie whispered. You framed me. Jake nodded. Yeah. Marcus shook his head. This dude got some nerve. Jake aimed his rifle at Volkov. Step away from her. Volkov chuckled. You're late. Jake smirked. I like dramatic entrances. Marcus whispered to Natalie. Is he helping us or killing us? Natalie didn't answer. Because she didn't know. Volkov studied Jake. You work for Hale. Jake shrugged. Used to. Volkov smiled. Ah. He snapped his fingers. The soldiers opened fire. Gunshots exploded through the bar. Marcus grabbed Natalie and dove behind the counter. Bullets tore through wood and glass. Marcus yelled. This is insane. Natalie checked the USB drive still in her hand. She wasn't letting it go. Jake fired across the room. 2 soldiers dropped. Volkov stepped back calmly. Kill them. Chaos erupted. Marcus fired a pistol he grabbed from his belt. Nat, we gotta move. Natalie looked toward the back door. Back exit. They ran through the kitchen. Bullets ripping through walls behind them. Jake followed. Marcus shouted. Why the hell are you helping us? Jake yelled back. Long story. They burst outside into the alley. But 3 soldiers were already waiting. Guns raised. Natalie froze. Marcus whispered. Well, we tried. Volkov walked out of the bar calmly. You were close. Natalie clenched the USB. Volkov stepped forward. Now give it to me. Jake suddenly moved. He stepped in front of Natalie. Volkov sighed. Mr. Miller, move. Jake didn't. Volkov pulled out a pistol. Last warning. Jake looked back at Natalie. For a moment his expression changed. Regret. Real regret. I'm sorry about everything, Nat. Natalie whispered. Jake. Bang. The gunshot echoed through the alley. Jake collapsed to the ground. Natalie screamed. Jake. Marcus grabbed her arm. Nat. Volkov stepped forward and picked up the USB drive from her frozen hand. He examined it calmly. Finally. Natalie dropped beside Jake. Blood spread across his shirt. Jake looked at her weakly. Guess. I deserve that. Tears filled Natalie's eyes. Why did you do it? Jake coughed. Because, they had my sister. Natalie froze. What? Jake whispered. They made me betray you. Marcus looked stunned. Jake grabbed Natalie's hand. You gotta stop them. Nat. His eyes faded. Don't let them win. Jake's hand went limp. Natalie felt something inside her break. Volkov slipped the USB drive into his coat. Touching. He turned toward his men. Kill them. Marcus whispered. Nat, run. Natalie slowly stood. Her face changed. Something darker took over. Volkov frowned slightly. Why are you smiling? Natalie wiped tears from her face. Because. She reached into her pocket. And pulled out something identical. Another USB drive. Volkov's expression changed instantly. What? Natalie smiled coldly. The one you took? A pause. Fake. Volkov's face twisted with rage. Natalie held up the real drive. Now the devil knows my name. Gunfire erupted again. And Natalie Carter ran into the Texas night. The Texas night roared with sirens. Natalie Carter sprinted through the dark alleyways of Houston, rain beginning to fall again as if the city itself was bracing for war. Behind her, gunfire echoed. Marcus ran beside her, breathing hard. Nat. Slow down. Natalie didn't stop. Her hand clutched the real USB drive so tightly her knuckles turned white. Behind them, Volkov's soldiers were shouting orders in Russian. Marcus glanced back. Oh man, they are pissed. Natalie turned the corner into a narrow street lined with old brick buildings. A neon taco sign buzzed overhead. Marcus grabbed her arm. Hold up. She spun around. What? Marcus pointed ahead. Black SUVs. 5 of them. Parked across the street. Natalie's stomach dropped. Volkov? Marcus shook his head slowly. No. The doors opened. Men stepped out. Suits. Clean haircuts. Expensive watches. Marcus groaned. Oh great, the billionaire squad. Victor Hale stepped out of the center SUV. Calm as ever. Hands in his coat pockets. He looked like he had just walked out of a board meeting instead of into a battlefield. Natalie's voice turned cold. You set this up. Victor smiled faintly. Of course I did. Marcus whispered. I really hate this dude. Volkov's soldiers emerged from the alley behind them. Weapons ready. Now Natalie stood trapped between 2 enemies. Marcus looked left. Looked right. Then sighed. Well, this is a classic movie ending situation. Volkov walked into the street slowly. His men spread out. Victor remained calm. The 2 powerful men faced each other like rival kings. Volkov spoke first. Hail. Victor nodded politely. Volkov. Natalie whispered to Marcus. They know each other? Marcus muttered. Apparently everybody knows everybody tonight. Volkov pointed at Natalie. She has something that belongs to us. Victor shook his head. No. His eyes moved to Natalie. That belongs to her. Natalie narrowed her eyes. What game are you playing, Victor? Victor's expression changed slightly. For the first time. He looked serious. This one is bigger than both of us. Volkov laughed coldly. You're bluffing. Victor shrugged. Am I? Volkov's soldiers raised their weapons. Victor's men did the same. Marcus whispered. Nat, if these dudes start shooting, we are absolutely dead. Natalie stared at Victor. Why are you helping me? Victor answered honestly. Because if Volkov gets that drive, millions of people die. Marcus blinked. Well, that escalated. Natalie raised the USB. What's actually on this thing? Volkov shouted. Don't listen to him. Victor stepped forward slowly. The drive contains a list of undercover intelligence agents across multiple governments. Natalie felt her heart skip. What? Victor nodded. CIA, MI6, Mossad, Interpol, thousands of identities. Marcus whispered. Holy crap. Victor continued calmly. Your father stole that list to prevent Volkov's organization from assassinating them. Natalie looked at the drive in her hand. So this is why he disappeared. Victor nodded. Yes. Volkov's voice turned deadly. Give it to me. Natalie shook her head slowly. No. Volkov raised his gun. Then you die. Marcus muttered. Bad option. Natalie suddenly laughed. Both sides looked confused. Volkov frowned. What is funny? Natalie looked at Victor. 3 years ago you framed me. Victor nodded. Yes. You destroyed my life. Yes. Natalie stepped forward. So why the hell should I trust you now? Victor answered calmly. You shouldn't. Marcus whispered. Honestly, fair. Volkov lost patience. Enough. He raised his weapon. But before he could fire, Natalie tossed the USB drive into the air. Everyone froze. Victor shouted. No. Volkov lunged forward. Natalie pulled out her pistol. Bang. The USB exploded into pieces midair. Silence. Complete silence. Tiny fragments of plastic fell onto the wet asphalt. Volkov stared in horror. You idiot. Natalie lowered the gun. Relax. Volkov's face twisted with rage. You destroyed it. Natalie smirked. No. She tapped her temple. I memorized it. Everyone froze again. Marcus blinked. You what? Natalie shrugged. Prison gives you a lot of free time. Victor stared at her with a mixture of shock and admiration. Volkov's face turned pale. You're lying. Natalie smiled coldly. Try me. Volkov whispered something in Russian. His men raised their weapons. Marcus groaned. Here we go again. Victor looked at Natalie. You understand what you just did? Natalie nodded. I became the list. Victor said quietly. Which means everyone will hunt you now. Natalie shrugged. They already are. Volkov stepped forward. Kill them. Gunfire exploded across the street. Victor's men opened fire. Volkov's soldiers returned it. Marcus dove behind a car. This night sucks. Natalie ran toward Victor. Bullets ripped through the street. Victor grabbed her arm. This way. They ran into a nearby parking garage. Marcus followed. Gunshots echoed behind them. Inside the garage the sound turned into thunder. Victor slammed a metal door behind them. Marcus leaned against the wall gasping. Okay, new rule. He pointed at Natalie. No more throwing world-ending USB drives. Natalie ignored him. She stared at Victor. You knew this would happen. Victor nodded. Yes. Natalie stepped closer. You used me. Victor didn't deny it. Yes. Marcus sighed. At least he's honest. Natalie looked into Victor's eyes. What now? Victor answered simply. You disappear. Marcus frowned. And the assassins? Victor replied calmly. They will hunt her forever. Natalie nodded slowly. I know. Marcus stared at her. You're okay with that? Natalie looked at the city lights through the garage window. Houston stretched endlessly into the night. 3 years ago I lost everything. She turned back. Tonight I got something back. Marcus asked quietly. What? Natalie's voice turned sharp again. Control. Sirens echoed in the distance. Police were coming. Victor adjusted his coat. You should leave. Natalie asked. And you? Victor smiled slightly. I have lawyers. Marcus laughed. Of course you do. Natalie walked toward the exit. Marcus followed. Victor called out behind her. Natalie. She stopped. Victor said quietly. You remind me of your father. Natalie didn't turn around. Good. Then she walked into the night. 6 months later. A bar in San Diego, California buzzed with late-night music. A woman sat at the counter sipping whiskey. Dark hair. Leather jacket. Silver lighter spinning between her fingers. The bartender asked. You new in town? She smirked. Passing through. The TV above the bar showed breaking news. International crime network led by Adrian Volkov dismantled after intelligence leaks. The bartender shook his head. Crazy world, huh? Natalie Carter smiled slightly. Yeah. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. You still alive? She typed back. Always. Across the bar a stranger sat watching her. Suit. Cold eyes. Government type. Natalie noticed immediately. The man walked over. Miss Carter. Natalie sighed. Here we go. The man sat down. We need to talk. Natalie smirked. You people always say that. He leaned closer. You have information that could change the world. Natalie took a slow sip of whiskey. And? The man smiled slightly. And we're hoping you'll work with us. Natalie laughed. Yeah, that's gonna be a no. She stood up. Flipped the silver lighter onto the bar. And walked toward the door. The man called after her. You can't run forever. Natalie paused at the doorway. Rain poured outside again. She turned back with a faint smile. I'm not running. A pause. I'm hunting. Then she stepped into the storm. And somewhere out there. The devil finally understood her name.